Thank you, Derek. Welcome, everybody. It's nice to see everybody here for the Northern Lights AA Roundup, and I welcome you all. As Derek said, my name is Fran R. I'm with Al-Anon, and I am here to introduce our speaker, the lovely Pat D. But first, we're going to do our Al-Anon welcome. For those of you who haven't heard it, you'll love it. It's beautiful. We welcome you to the AA Roundup family group and hope that you will find in this fellowship the help and friendship we have been privileged to enjoy. We who live or have lived with the problem of alcoholism understand as perhaps few others can. We too were lonely and frustrated, but in Al-Anon we discovered that no situation is really hopeless and that it is possible for us to find contentment and even happiness, whether the alcoholic is still drinking or not. We urge you to try our program. It has helped many of us find solutions that lead to serenity. So much depends on our own attitudes, and as we learn to place our problems in their true perspective, we find it loses its power to dominate our thoughts and our lives. The family situation is bound to improve as we apply the Al-Anon ideas. Without such spiritual help, living with the alcoholic is too much for most of us. Our thinking becomes distorted by trying to force solutions, and we become irritable and unreasonable without knowing it. The Al-Anon program is based on the 12 steps, adapted from Alcoholics Anonymous, which we try little by little, one day at a time, to apply to our lives, along with our slogans and the Serenity Prayer. The loving interchange of help among members and the daily reading of Al-Anon literature thus makes us ready to receive the priceless gift of serenity. Anonymity is the important principle of our AA program. Everything that is said here in the group meeting and member to member must be held in confidence. Only in this way can we feel free to say what is in our minds and hearts, for this is how we help one another in Al-Anon. Thank you, everybody. Pat?
Thanks. Hi, my name is Pat, and I'm a grateful member of Al-Anon.
Hi, Pat.
I loved it when Derek said, Pat S. was going to speak, and I thought, oh, good. I'd like to meet her. Anyway, I guess I don't get out of it that easily. Thank you for the opportunity to share my experience, strength, and hope with you today. I love the name you've given the weekend, One Day at a Time, and it has been my experience that sometimes 1 hour at a time or 1 minute at a time and or 1 second at a time has been an invaluable slogan for me. Another lesson that I have learned that I feel is invaluable is being able to laugh. Let me give you an example of that. Last year, I went to the drugstore to pick up a prescription, and I gave my usual wide smile to a very pretty young lady behind the counter. Let me emphasize young. She looked at me in amazement and said, "Are those your real teeth?" I started to laugh, and I said, "Yes, they are." She said, "Wow," like she was just amazed. I didn't tell her how much money I've spent on these teeth, but it's afterwards my friends and I came up with some really funny answers, like, oh no, they're not. I just picked them up off the floor and put them in my mouth. Or, oh no, they belong to my Uncle Harry, and he passed them on when he passed away. Anyway, and still another time, I was asked if I could help show this lady's goats at the Quesnel Fair. And I thought, how difficult could that be? It's quite a lot to learn. You apparently can't get between the judge and the goat, so there's a correct side to walk on. Next, you have to pose the goat by making him stand still with his legs equally apart. And then you need to plump his balls. That's an experience I won't forget. So this story today is divided into 3 parts, as most of you know. What it was like, what happened, and what is it like now? What is it like? What was it like? Section 1. I grew up in the East End of Vancouver by a controlling mom who, I am sure, thought she was sheltering me from life's highways. Dad was in the picture, but very rarely argued with Mom. I have one younger brother who ended up to be a pastor, and he told me he learnt from my mistakes. So part of the learning was to grow up, fall in love, get married, and have sex in that order. So another funny story here, when I was 16, I found a birthday card for my 17-year-old boyfriend. And my mother told me I couldn't give it to him, and I didn't understand why, so I memorized it, so when I got older, I'd figure it out. So the card says, friends may come and friends may go, and friends may peter out, you know. Open the card. But we'll be friends through thick or thin, peter out or peter in. This boyfriend was the pastor's son, and we had gone to see Mutiny on the Bounty. And we came home, and it was a bright sunny afternoon, and for some reason, he did something, and I slapped him across the face and ran into the house, jumped into a hot bath, because that's all I'd seen on TV. And my mother came in and said, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" I said, "I think I'm pregnant. I think I'm pregnant." She said, "What happened? What happened?" I said, "Walter put his tongue in my mouth." She said, she told me how you had sex, and I said, "You have to take your clothes off? You have to take your clothes off? You keep telling me how easy it is to get pregnant, and you have to take your clothes off?" I couldn't believe it. I was elected the grade 12 president and still have at least 4 graduates I keep in contact with. My mom wanted me to go to university, but I had other plans as I wanted a job and out of the house. And in high school, when I got dressed in the morning, my mom would tell me that what I was wearing looked stupid and to go and change. So I interpreted that to mean I was stupid, and I wasn't going to go to university to prove it. I was brought up to believe, remember, that you fall in love, get married, and have sex in that order. Now I'm 18, and a fellow asks me to marry him. I lose my virginity, and that was the last time I saw him. So that night was pretty devastating. I tried to commit suicide, but I believed I didn't have the guts to do it. Probably a good thing now, but anyway, at the time, I felt that God put me on earth to make other people happy, but I couldn't be happy. I just wasn't pure anymore, and that was a lot of my self-worth problem. I had an excellent typing speed, and IBM hired me out of high school at $260 a month. and trained me as a key punch operator. I moved from key punch and became a quality control supervisor, and 3 years later I accepted a job at Kelly Douglas as a night shift key punch supervisor. The last day at IBM, the branch manager called me into the Vancouver office and offered me double a month to stay. And I said to him, I don't understand how I can be worth double a month today when I wasn't worth double a month 2 weeks ago. He didn't quite know what to say, but I said, I've given my word to Kelly Douglas, and I will be starting with them Monday evening. Thank you. So I have to kind of look at my life as being relatively good and successful on my work life, and an absolute Jekyll and Hyde on my personal life. So I'm not sure, I guess we're all not sure about a lot of things, but I think it's because I excelled at my work ethic, but again felt that I wasn't good enough in my personal life. So now I try to find guys I can fix. I wonder where there are some. It's okay. I've been married 3 times. I've had enough. So from 18 until the early 90s, I went from one relationship to another, trying to make men happy and believing if I made you happy, then you would make me happy. My mom was not going to let me move out till I got married, so I found one of you. I was 23 when I married my first alcoholic. We lived in Maple Ridge for a little bit until his dad got him a job at the jail in Prince George as a guard, and we moved up here in 1971. He didn't like the job at all and quit and became a car salesman. And after we separated 3 years later, he got on at one of the pulp mills, quit drinking, all without my help. This fellow was desperately wanting a family, and I have had reservations about having children since I was 12 years old. I wondered how old I would be before I didn't cry every day. I couldn't do anything right as a child. I often wondered, why get good marks, as you can always do better? So I didn't try. This husband I was married to came after me with a shotgun one night, and I was so scared to leave him, I planned my escape. I was driving to work the next day, and it was as if I had had sunglasses on, and someone removed them from my eyes. I now know this was my higher power, but at the time I didn't realize that. I asked a girlfriend if I could move in with her when and if I had the courage to leave, and she agreed. I worry a lot about what the other person will do in various situations, and I was really afraid to tell him I was leaving. After work, I drive into our driveway that same day, and everything I owned was packed in the driveway. And he loaded it into the car and said he would drive me wherever I wanted to go. I arrived on my girlfriend's doorstep the same day. I asked her if I could move in with her. All that worrying for nothing. So what you're going to hear today is after I talk about a particular alcoholic, I will write that alcoholic a letter. So this is the first letter to this particular alcoholic with the shotgun. Dear alcoholic, I love you. I am grateful you made the decision to toss me out of your life. You really did scare me with that shotgun. I tried so hard to make you happy. I made you a homemade pie almost every night we were together because you love sweets and my pastry. I tried hard to keep your home clean and neat. I did the laundry, cooked the meals, worked full time. And never having been married before, I went to my doctor to find out what was wrong with me because I couldn't understand how you could read a Western book while we made love. That just didn't seem right to me. The doctor asked me who approached who for sex, and I admitted I did, and he said, wait 'em out and learn how to masturbate. I didn't realize this was a life lesson that would keep me happy throughout my life. Thank you. Looking back now, I need to make an amend for meeting you on a blind date New Year's Eve of 1970, getting engaged 2 weeks later, and marrying you April 3rd the same year. I now know that I was escaping my mother and home life, and you gave me the out I needed at the time. I am sorry I used you, and years ago I heard you had stopped drinking, moved, remarried, and became a steam plant Class 1 engineer. Thank you again for the lessons you taught me. For your information, when you were sober, you were an introvert, quiet, appreciative, and nice to be with. But when the booze changed your attitude and behaviors, you turned angry, mean, scary, and violent. Thank you for the lesson of learning when to get out of our relationship that you very kindly made for me. I loved you when your behaviors were in check. Pat. Moving on. In the mid-70s, I met my soulmate, a large French guy who truly was a great guy. He had separated from his wife, and his wife had moved out of town. He had a very rare form of cancer and had been to the Mayo Clinic and found out only one other person in the world had his type of cancer. During our 3-year relationship, I got pregnant and asked him to start his divorce proceedings, which he didn't do, probably because he knew he wasn't going to live long. So I went ahead and had an abortion. He died in 1979. I found out later he and his wife couldn't have children, but they had not known which of them couldn't have them. Dear soulmate, I loved you. Thank you for the happiest 3 days of my adult life. Thank you for teaching me that the F word didn't belong in my vocabulary, that it cheapened me and was unbecoming. But sometimes I still say it. Please forgive me for aborting our baby. I am so sorry. Thank you for our trip to Barbados in 1977, flying home on my 30th birthday. Thank you for loving me unconditionally. Pat. Moving on. To the late 70s, I had a call from a fellow who used to fly up from Vancouver to do fire checks at the pulp mill where I worked. He wanted to know if I had room to house his nephew who got a job at the mill, but in those days you had to do 30 days before you actually got a permanent job. So I said that I had rented out my 2 bedrooms, but that I had a couch he could be on. Well, that was the start of my second eventual marriage. This fellow arrives on my doorstep, huge guy with massive shoulders and red hair. Very much an extrovert who used to like fine dining, dancing, and partying. We had many good times together, but over time, I allowed him to make all the decisions, and I lost myself in this relationship and became afraid to say what I wanted or needed for fear of rejection and loneliness. Believe it or not, I was afraid to answer questions from him like, where should we go for dinner? Or do you want pizza or Chinese food? Dear alcoholic, I love you. Thank you for the 10 years we spent together. You taught me a lot of lessons. This is a good one. How to play pool or 8-ball well enough that I joined a ladies' 8-ball league to play competitively. Not that I ever rose to any high status at all, but one lesson I will always remember is to call 2 balls before you shoot the cue ball. So, and I go to explain this, so that if I'm shooting low ball, I call the 6 ball in the side pocket, and I need to call the 2 ball in the corner pocket before I shoot my first cue ball. Does that make sense? So I call the 6 ball in the side pocket and then the 2 ball in the corner pocket. This lesson taught me how to place the cue ball in position to hit the second shot. Also, spread and between. Spread your legs and place the pool cue between your tits and put your chin down on the pool cue. How to play golf. You were fortunate enough to play golf all your life and found that you had a lot of natural ability at hitting a golf ball straight and a long way down the fairway. I played in a ladies' league for a couple of years, but it just wasn't my first love. I guess I did a lot of leading on the dance floor, and you taught me how to follow you. I thank you for teaching me how to really drink. I will never forget going to a restaurant in Vancouver and learning to drink martinis. Gosh, that is not a drink of my choice. How can people drink that stuff? I don't think I've ever been that ill. Thank you that I didn't or haven't become an alcoholic, because I sure tried to keep up with you. We had a lot of fun cooking gourmet meals for a group of 8 people. Every month, we would alternate houses and cook a meal for 4 couples. I'll never forget the homemade lasagna we made with fresh tomatoes, where you had to blanch the tomatoes so that the skin would come off. What a lot of time and effort that took, and I've never done tomatoes like that again. We played bridge with people on a regular basis until you became so upset and angry that it really did dampen the entire evening, and it wasn't enjoyable all the time. I remember the first time you met my very good friends, and we were driving home, and you said, "How can he put up with her? She's a real bitch." I thank my ex-best friend to this day for having an affair with you and ending our relationship. So the girl he called a bitch is with the one he's with today. So that was kind of an interesting part of my life. There were warning signs that you two were fooling around, but you both denied it. We had been partying one night, and you and this friend of ours were going to pick up some food. And I said I didn't want anything, but I changed my mind. And I ran after them and found them in the truck where they were necking. I opened the door and really surprised the both of them. And they said, "Hey, what do you want?" I said, "I changed my mind and I want a hamburger." We had a boat and camper, and this ex-best friend had a daughter in school. And I would pick her up from school and meet the exes at Pitka Bay, because he would get off early and she would get off early, so they went and set the camper up at the Pitka Bay where we were. And while the daughter and I were driving to the lake, she said, "Does it ever bother you the way your husband and my mom carry on?" I said, "Well, if anything ever happens with them, that they would become the losers. Apparently, they have had differences over the years, but they are still together today. You were an extrovert who enjoyed being with people, dancing, partying, and controlling. You had an opinion on everything. Happy me, another broken relationship where all I wanted you to do was love, respect, and support me. Pat." Moving on. I met my next alcoholic through a friend at a pub. That probably should have been my first clue. He and his wife were divorced and had 5 kids, 4 boys who lived with their dad and 1 daughter who lived with the mom. I moved in with the dad and now had 4 kids in their teens. This relationship lasted approximately 2.5 years. And at the dinner table one night, the dad announced I was leaving because they didn't keep the house clean enough. The dad was drunk when he said this, so I didn't say anything to dispute his statement. But the next night at dinner, he was kind of sober. So I told the oldest boy that the reason I was leaving was because of his dad's drinking. Obviously, this did not go over very well, but at least I was able to get the truth out. This alcoholic was an introvert who was a millwright and was very good 5-pin bowler. Bowling was something I had done my whole life, so an activity we could do together. This guy remarried after our split and moved to Quesnel for work, and then they split up, and later he was found dead from a heart attack after grocery shopping. He hadn't shown up for work for a couple of days, and no one had talked to him, so his boss went to his house and found him. Dear alcoholic, I love you. Thank you for sharing your 4 boys with me. I loved playing mom. Those kids were so good, polite, and well-mannered. I loved your mom too, and she and I attended church together while we were together, and even after we split up until she was not well enough to go. I still meet with your sister once a month for lunch, and thank you for both your mom and sister. Pat. Chapter 2, What Happened? From this alcoholic, I went from the frying pan into the fire, because this new guy had just got out of federal prison. I'm thinking, surely I can help this one. This fellow was an excellent piano player, and I met him at the Legion playing the piano. I told him I played an accordion, and he told me to go home and get it, so I did. This relationship is crucial to my story because this one eventually led me to Al-Anon. My aunt and uncle on my mother's side were both attendees of AA and Al-Anon and were visiting us from Vancouver. After living with us for a couple of days, they said I needed to go to Al-Anon. I will never forget my first meeting. We had beginners meetings in those days, and I was told I was sicker than the alcoholic. Can you believe that? I couldn't believe it. I asked, why are you saying that? Well, didn't you just hear yourself, they said. You said you do all the cooking, cleaning, pay all the bills, all the laundry and ironing, and you work full-time supporting him financially. I said, so? I had no clue what was wrong with that, just that I was tired all the time, confused, and my life was totally unmanageable. My time with this alcoholic was 3 years, and during this time, I was deciding whether to buy a house in Hickson. I reneged on the deal for a month because I thought I was too close to the pub in Hickson. But Al-Anon told me I wanted to live as close as possible to the pub because one of 2 things was going to happen. He was either going to quit drinking or die drinking, and I had no control over either one. This was a bit of a wake-up call for me. During this time, he would go out of town on gigs, and he would phone me in the middle of the night and ask me who I was sleeping with. What? And he would go on and on and on about whatever, and I would politely listen and listen and listen, while getting more and more upset and afraid to hang up on him because I thought he'd drink more. Al-Anon told me, when he calls again, say, thank you for calling. Glad your gig went well. I love you. I need to work in the morning. good night, hang up, and unplug the phone. What? Won't he drink more because I did that? Al-Anon said, he'll drink whether you hang up or not. We arrived back in Hickson after visiting my family in Vancouver, and I was asked if I wanted to play in a slow pitch tournament at the fairgrounds. I loved playing ball, so off I went, and I ruptured my Achilles tendon. I ended up being on crutches for about 6 weeks, and I was working in Prince George, so I had to be driven back and forth. This drinker called me in the afternoon. I could tell he was drunk, and I told him not to come and get me that night, that I would get a motel, and he could pick me up the next day. I had a day job, and I also had a night job, and the night job was at the college, and I got someone to come and sit in the back of the classroom and give me the high sign if the drinker showed up. He did show up. I got the high sign. I dismissed the class, and everyone left except the friend I had in the back. And the drinker came into the room and asked what the F that guy was doing in the room. So he left, and I knew he was going to call the police for me. I got my coat on and put my purse over my head and start to walk on my crutches, pretending to go really fast, but hardly moving. Now remember, this guy is drunk. So there I am on these crutches going like this, pretending I'm really moving fast, and I'm only moving just slow, little bit to give the police time to get there. Anyway, finally he gets so upset with me, he said, "Wait here, I'll go and get the truck." So as he turned to go, I looked around, and he was gone, and there was this little hill, and there were lights going up a path to a pub. And I ran as fast as I could on crutches up to the pub, right up to the counter, and said, "I have to call the police, I have to call the police." The person could see how distraught I was and gave me the phone, and the dispatcher said, "We have already sent someone there, stay on the phone with me." By the time I had gone behind the bar and crouched down and hid behind it, the police really were there. The police showed up, and I never saw that drinker again. I went back to the place where the path had been with the lights going up the hill, and guess what? No path, no lights. My higher power again. No path, no lights. I couldn't believe it. It was as if there was just nothing there, just the hill. It kind of still gives me shivers. No path and no lights. Thank you, God. Although a couple of friends of mine said I could stay with them, I felt it was safer for me and my friends to go to a safe house. This guy had been in federal prison for arson, so I felt being in a safe house was safer for all. I got a restraining order on him and got him out of the house in Hickson, and he moved back to Ontario for a time. 2 years later, I get a phone call from him, and I told him I had an RCMP file on him, and if he ever called me again, I would call the police. About 6 months after that, I got a call from a friend in Hickson asking me if I had heard about the murder and the drinker's involvement in it. I said no and asked if the drinker was the murderer or the murderee. They said he died fighting over a case of beer with a shotgun between them. Dear alcoholic, I love you. You taught me a lot about life. I didn't have any alcohol in my house for 3 years, thinking this was helping you. I bought you a brand new electric piano, speakers, microphones, drums, and all the backup equipment you could want. All the things you needed to play your gigs. Even shirts embroidered with your name of the group and your first name on them for you and your band. Bought you a truck to get you back and forth to your gigs. Supported you for 3 years. We attended the Hickson Pentecostal Church where you played piano, and I sometimes accompanied you on my accordion. Hickson was also the place I gave myself to the Lord, and that is something I will be forever grateful to you for. We made a cassette together of our music to give to friends and family as gifts at Christmas one year. We played gigs together for a while at Ben Nisty and Clucas Lake. Thank you for showing yourself to my aunt and uncle, who thought it wise to introduce me to Al-Anon. You were an extrovert who had an amazing talent on the piano. You loved people around you and loved to entertain them. Pat. Moving along. In 1994, I was asked if my friend could give my phone number to a friend of hers. I said, "Does this person have a job?" That was the only question I ever asked about my third husband. He was a very hard-working husband who drank every day, but I can honestly say I only saw him drunk twice in our 25-year relationship. He had 2 children from his first marriage, a son and a daughter. 4 grandchildren were born. A boy in 2000, a girl in 2002 who are on the coast, and a boy in 2011 and another boy in 2015 in Prince George. My husband was very concerned about the child born in 2011, that during 2012, he asked if the baby could come and live with us. Both parents were addicts. I did not know the son was an addict, but I knew the mother had a problem with drugs. I said yes, the son could come too, so that he could learn from the father how to look after a baby. The mom was in detox at the time. Eventually, the mom was allowed to see the baby under supervision, and they were all going to be living with us. And I wasn't even asked if this was okay with me. So I called my sponsor, and she told me to pack a bag and come and live with her for a few days. But she also told me I had to leave a note for my husband. I didn't have a clue what to write, so she told me to get a pen, and she dictated. "Dear so-and-so, I am not leaving you. I am leaving my living situation." Anyway, I can remember driving to my sponsor's apartment thinking, this won't last long. He can't possibly live without me. I worked full-time, cooked, cleaned, laundry, entertained, bought groceries. I also talked him into starting his own business and typed all his estimates and invoices for him. I got an apartment in the same building my sponsor lived in and stayed married to him until our divorce in 2019. We remain friends to this day because I am still involved with the boy with which my husband helped raise. In 2020, the youngest boy, who was 4 years old, died of a fentanyl overdose. To this day, we really don't know what happened. The doctor said that if an adult had fentanyl on their clothing and hugged a child, that could be enough to kill them. Dear alcoholic, I love you. We've known each other for 30 years now. Man, the time goes fast. I am grateful for the lessons you are to this day teaching me. Boundaries and learning to say no. No, I won't drop everything and run to your assistance. In fact, I turn my phone off at night now, so you can't ask me to run up to the heart and put your garbage out, and any other things you might need me to do. Thank you for having the strength and conviction and tenacity to raise a 8-month-old baby to the age of 12 with a little bit of help from me. Thank you for reaching out to the ministry when you needed help with the discipline issues with your 12-year-old grandson. Thank you for strengthening my patience. Pat. Chapter 3. Woohoo! We're getting there. What's life like now? Well, it is woohoo compared to. I try to do everything today dependent of my higher power. I have a daily routine. I write a letter of gratitude every morning to my higher power. I have coffee with my higher power. I read a recovery Bible, a few verses every morning. There's several things I do. They're boring to you because it's just a list of. So someone said, just summarize it. So there's a summary. Dear higher power, whom I choose to call God, I love you. Thank you for all the alcoholics, addicts, and dysfunctional people you have put into my life, because I would not be the person I am today without them. Thank you for forgiving me and all the hurt I have caused and do cause. I want to remain in recovery one day at a time for as long as you allow me to be here on earth. Thank you for your wisdom, courage, protection, forgiveness, love, kindness, patience, food, shelter, and friendships. Thank you for teaching me to live one day at a time and not to take life so personally, and to change negatives in my life to opportunities of growth. Please help me to remember that it doesn't matter what happens to me, but how I handle what happens to me. Thank you for the sponsors and sponsees you've put into my life and the friendships that have developed. My Al-Anon and AA families have been the legs of my table, helping to mold, shape, and support me. Realizing I need to move out of my higher power's way and allow him to take care of the people, places, and things that I used to constantly worry over. Thank you for the daily education you afford me. Thank you for allowing me to see your wisdom and know it is so much greater than mine. Thank you for being with me when my two closest friends passed away, one last year and one this year. The girlfriend I moved in with after my first marriage broke up, and then a friend from Vancouver who I graduated from high school with. Thank you for a girlfriend that is still alive that I met in the early 70s, who is a constant support to me. Thank you for my church family and friends who have been my solid spiritual support and love. Do I worry about what they may think of me if they heard my story? Nope. I own my part, and I know that you have given me the love needed to believe that my past life is not who I am today, but to use that experience, strength, and hope to help others believe there is hope for each and every one. Thank you for allowing me to have complete dependence upon you and know you have a plan for everyone's life, and that I can trust and believe that to be true. Thank you for the Recovery Bible. In it you tell me, and I quote, just a short one, part of the recovery process is accepting complete forgiveness from God or our higher power. We may keep track of our failures, adding every one to a long list we have written out against ourselves. But God doesn't keep lists of our past sins. In His eyes, we are clean. When I read that passage 11 years ago, I cried my eyes out. I called my brother and I said, God says I'm clean. He doesn't keep lists of my past sins. Holy cow, this is terrific. Remember, life is short. Be happy. Laugh a lot. One more joke. And this is a true story that some people tell me I shouldn't say. My mom was born in Newfoundland, and I went a long time saying I was a quarter Newfie. When my second husband asked why I said I was quarter Newfie, I said, that's easy. There's 4 in my family, my mom, my dad, my brother, and me. I'm quarter Newfie. Remember to fill your heart with gratitude and humility. My higher power loves me, and he loves you too. I love you so much, higher power. Please continue to keep me on the path that you want me on, never leaving me and helping me and us grow one day at a time. All my love, Pat. Amen.